Hey, this is a video response to the Hard is Easy Belay Masterclass, episode 6, specifically regarding different belaying techniques and what to do if there's too much slack in a lead climbing situation you have to take it in really quickly. So I hold Ben's videos in really high regard. I think he's a really good educator. So I was surprised to see some techniques in his video that I and some other people in the comments didn't agree with. So just kind of showing our thoughts there. First was the tunneling. So apparently this is a pretty common practice in certain countries, is to, when you pull in slack, to then form a tunnel with your brake hand, slide that up the rope to then be able to pull in another armful of slack. So I've always kind of tried to discourage this just because it feels weird having your brake hand with a loose grip on the rope, with the fear that if a climber were to fall in the moment when you're tunneling upwards, that the rope would slip through your hand, and then either you would drop them by having the rope slip through, or you would burn your hand and then you drop them by letting go of the rope. I've always seen this as kind of like a hypothetical situation, but apparently someone in the comments has firsthand experience of that actually happening, of a hold breaking on a climber falling unexpectedly, and the belayer dropping them because the rope was burning their hand as they were tunneling up the rope when the climber fell. So potentially something to avoid. You could argue then that a different belay device like a gree or some kind of assisted braking device might catch the climber while you're tunneling upwards, if that were the situation to happen. But still, having the device overcome a potential flaw in the technique seems a little risky to me. So then when taking in lots of slack, he was saying tunneling, which it is kind of cumbersome. And then the solution offered to that is the swapping hands. I understand this is kind of the way that's taught in the UK. And if done correctly, I don't really see it being a safety issue. Some gyms in the United States, where I am, don't allow letting go of the rope with your brake hand. So crossing the hands, you are letting go with your brake hand, even though you have another hand on the rope. So some gyms won't allow that, although I don't see it as a huge safety concern as long as it's done correctly. With a beginner though, if they're learning to do it the first time, maybe they could accidentally grab the wrong rope, or letting go of the rope opens some possibility of making a mistake. So the way that is most often taught now in America is the P-bus, or I've also heard it referred to as the plus system, for pull, brake, under, slide, or pull, lock, under, slide. And I think that's what the Petzl universal belay technique was. When Ben was trying to figure it out though, he was pulling, brake, and then he was kind of going this way and crossing his arm behind the belay device. That's probably why it made it feel so awkward. You usually want to bring your arm in front of the blade, so you don't ever want to really have your arm crossed behind it. So his solution, so when there's a lot of slack in the system, was to then bring your arm here, slide your non-braking hand, and then bring your hand closer. So that was more comfortable for him than doing this and going behind it, which I understand definitely isn't comfortable. But this seems kind of strange to me as well, because when you're like this, having your hand behind it, if your climber falls right now, your other hand is going to get pulled into the device and it's above the device. It'd be really awkward to try to keep it below the device, and having your hands crossed like that just seems really weird to me. So when I do the universal belay technique, or P-bus, or whatever you want to call it, I like to, when it's a top rope situation like this where the rope's kind of going up, it's pretty simple to kind of go towards your crotch, as people have suggested in the comments, and then grab underneath and slide. But sometimes if you're taking a big armful, you get a lot of stuff happening in this small area, and it's hard to manage. So if I'm trying to take in slack really quickly, instead of going towards my crotch, I'll go to the side towards my left hip, or like where my leg loop is. And then since I'm right-handed with my right brake hand, it brings it to my left side, where my other hand's gonna then come under and slide. So I'm kind of operating in a plane more to the side of my body rather than in front of it. And then that's also what I do if there is that situation where, say, there's too much slack in a lead climbing situation, and they're gonna fall, so you have to take it in really quickly. So the Ben's solution was kind of doing this, which it is very fast, but then if they fall while they're in the middle of that, which is likely, you could then have your hand in a weird spot So what I tend to do is I try to use the P-bus, which some people have suggested it might be too difficult to use in a lead climbing situation. Once you practice it a little bit, it's not too bad. And then the way I do it is you pull, and when you brake, you go to the side here, and you can see that does two things. One, it puts your hand in a position where it's easy to grab with your left hand, and the other is you can see my forearm kind of cradles the blade device. So it keeps you from falling down, which is probably the source of the problem, having everything wander too far away from you where you can't reach it. So you'd pull, brake with that cradled, under, slide, pull, brake, under, slide. And sometimes if this is going really fast, I'll miss the leader's rope when I'm trying to pull in, but that doesn't really matter. As long as my brake hand is able to pull in rope and I can go back, I can kind of keep on going, even if I'm just pulling the slack on the one hand, as long as my left hand is here to then pull in the rope. And it's pretty quick. I also saw, I never heard of this before, but I saw one other technique that was mentioned in the comments, where if there's too much slack in the system, let's pull some in here, and then you have to pull in slack like that, you would actually pull and then go down into brake and alternate hands. So go to that one, and then go that one, and then go this one. And my technique might not be perfect because I literally learned this today, so I've never practiced it. But it makes sense as a quick way to do it. But my concern here is that for the method that I use, your right hand never leaves the rope. So you might have that instinct to catch a fall to always bring your right hand down, and your left hand might be free, like Ben had mentioned in his video, to block a swinging climber coming towards you or keep yourself from hitting the wall. And usually I try to just hold the rope with both hands, although that could be an issue if you get pulled up to the first quick draw, having your hand pinched between your device and the first quick draw. But you can have the left hand free, where if you're alternating hands, and now your left hand is the brake hand, you let go with your right hand to pull in more rope. If the climber falls here, and you've made it an instinct to grab with your right hand and then hold your left hand out to protect you, you can see now I've just dropped the brake strand and there's nothing to keep my climber from falling all the way to the ground. So that's the thing that kind of worried me about alternating hands like this. Although, again, I'm very inexperienced in using that technique, so maybe this is a non-issue for people who do this regularly. But then to show you in kind of full speed, my personal solution, which you can take it or leave it, is to do the P-bus system really quickly, kind of going to your side like this, and you can pretty quickly pull in some rope that way and catch your climber if they fall. So I hope that was helpful. Oh, actually, there's one more thing. There's one more technique. So this actually, I retrained myself. I started climbing maybe 15 years ago or so, and I retrained myself to use this P-bus technique when it became kind of the standard in America. When I first learned to climb, I was taught this technique where you we call it alpine style at the gym where I climb, where you pull your brake strand up and you have the ropes parallel. You pinch above your braking hand and slide that back down. And then if the climber ever falls, you'd have to go into brake. But while they're climbing, you're almost just staying in this vertical orientation with your brake hand, which is why this has been phased out. Because if the climber falls while you're doing this, it's going to pull your hand in pretty quickly if you're not having good reflexes to go into brake. And the other issue with this is that if you use the wrong technique and then you grab underneath, you can't come down with your brake hand, so you're forced to let go and do that. And in that moment, when you've let go, now you're holding the device out of brake with your hand off the rope. So that's obviously really bad. I think the reason for this technique is more for a munter hitch, where munter hitch, this is actually brake position rather than this. So when you have the munter hitch instead of a belay device, maybe that used to make more sense, but we've kind of phased this out. Although when I was lead belaying that way, I found that actually a little bit more convenient to kind of pull in the slack like this when there's extra slack in the system. So occasionally, I used to, before I kind of developed this method of crossing under, I used to kind of do it that way to take in slack, which might work for some people as well. The issue here is that there is the moment where you're kind of pinching the rope out of brake position. So if your climber falls here and your instinct is to clench down on the rope with both hands, then you're not letting the device really lock, and you might burn your hands or jam your hand into something. So the best way I've found is this method, but feel free to comment if you have any other suggestions or ideas. Thanks.